we have a heat wave. It's now 11 in the morning, 27.5 degrees Celsius, and that's kind of hot. So this video is gonna be a lazy video. Even holding the camera is just making me sweat, and I'm sure you have something better to do with this weather because there's a heat wave going on almost everywhere, I think. So let's quickly do a video and talk about the stuff I have been doing that I can't show you. Not that I don't want to show you, I literally can't show you. We'll talk about it after the intro. Alright, the Kickstarter is currently at 51% as I'm recording this, and we're 13 days away from the finish line. Again, I have no idea how to measure it, and if you didn't know about my Kickstarter, then make sure you check it out. There's a demo of Residual. All that stuff is on the page there. I have no idea how to measure a Kickstarter. I do know that usually at the middle a Kickstarter flattens out, and then at the end you get a spike of new funders and backers and things like that. So I'm hoping we're on schedule, but like I said, I have no idea how to measure it. It's my first Kickstarter, but it's been certainly a very interesting ride. This week I uploaded a new video. You might have seen it on the channel as well. There's a new Kickstarter video, a new thumbnail, some new information, and I learned a lot from this first Kickstarter, and I'll do a proper video on that soon after the Kickstarter is done. It's been interesting, and if we reach the goal, I'm certainly gonna do it again with another big game. If we don't reach the goal, I might still do it with another big game, because I think it's a very interesting way to fund game development. But that's everything about the Kickstarter. This week's stuff done on the game is a lot of stuff, but not very visual. I mentioned this in a couple of videos a few weeks ago, that there will be weeks where I do a lot of stuff and a lot of work on the game, but it's just not going to be interesting to show you because it's not visual. A lot of code changes, a lot of stuff gets added, but without the player noticing. So, alright, so what did I add to the game? Well, let me just give you an example. I added a little item that's called a woofer, and I also added a little item called a sonic. These devices both send out a signal to the world, and you can scare away certain insects depending on the type of sounds they are annoyed by. Adding those items was pretty easy, pretty quickly done, but those items need to be made and crafted. But you can't have that knowledge yet, so the player has to learn that knowledge. So in order to learn the knowledge, you'll have to find ancient data cubes that are now hovering around the game world. So we now had to add a woofer and a sonic item. I had to add a little altar that houses a data cube. You can grab that data cube, bring it to your spaceship. I had to reprogram the spaceship's printer gadget so that it can actually handle that data cube. Then I had to add the code that makes sure that every data cube gives you information to craft something new. And then we get the information on crafting the woofer and sonic item I just mentioned. So that's a lot of changes and stuff added and made to the game code, but not a lot of that is visual. Still, it had to be done, and it's very important. The next problem is that these items can't be made with metal and deuterium, because we can't have everything in the game or in the world be made with just two resources. So I had to add another resource. I added graphite to the mix. So now I had to draw graphite, I had to place it in the game world, make sure it's there and it's available. I had to add it as a resource so that the 3D printer in your spaceship knows what it's printing. So I had to create a deployable device that can be used to mine graphite. I had to draw that device, I had to animate it, and I had to make sure there are actually pockets in the world that have graphite in them. That's a lot of code and a lot of changes and fixes and things done to the code, but visually it's just a little mining device and a little black rock, which looks like not much, but all the code involved in that took me a couple of days, because I also had to reorder and resort a bunch of code, because you often create code and thinking it's the best code ever, but then you want to give it more functionality and add more options to it. So in this case, we had a lot of code for resources. We had metal, deuterium, and coal. And now we added a new resource, graphite, and it has a new mining device, and it has a couple of other things that are specific to that resource. And that meant all the code for all the resources had to be flexible enough to handle that type of resource. So again, that's just adding a tiny thing and a lot of code changes. It's just not very visual for these devlog videos. So I've also been just sitting outside in the sun and using those sun hours to draw and sketch new game ideas. Because you often dive into a new game project and you have certain ideas you want to try and create, and once they are made and they are working, you need to add new ideas, or else you have a very tiny little game that's probably not a lot of fun. So I'm just sketching a lot of ideas out and drawing entities and drawing level templates, ideas that might be interesting. So even though I'm enjoying the sun and the weather, I'm still trying to be productive, because as soon as I have all these things written down and my head is pretty much coding it already, I can just sit behind the computer and in most cases I can just type it all out and have something on the screen pretty quickly, because my head has done all the work already. And that's it for this week's video, because now I'm going back outside and sketch new ideas and maybe think about some ideas for the Kickstarter and see if we can do that last push into towards that 100% goal. If you have any questions about the game or this whole process I'm just explaining, let me know in the comments below, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and enjoy the weather, and I'll see you next week. Bye.